In Puerto Rico, violent militants murder a policeman, then turn their guns on a busload of unarmed Navy workers and open fire on American sailors in the street. These ruthless killers have vowed to fight to the death. And the FBI must use every tactic at their disposal to track down the terrorists and end this rebellion in paradise.
A band of extremists waged a guerrilla war against the United States. Their goal, to make the island an independent nation or die trying. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. In 1983, the investigation became personal for agents when terrorists attacked their offices in San Juan. For the FBI, catching the perpetrators would depend on skill, patience, and turning a handful of small clues into one big break.
The Caribbean island of Puerto Rico is home to 3 million American citizens and a handful of anti-American terrorists. On August 24th, 1978, 2 Puerto Rican patrolmen encounter what appears to be a stranded couple. They stop to help. Suddenly, 3 heavily armed men rush them. One patrolman tries to draw his gun, but he's immediately shot and killed. The other patrolman surrenders. The attackers force him into the woods and order him to remove his uniform. Then bind him to a tree with his own handcuffs. Back at the road, the couple attempts to disguise the patrol car so they can drive it to a hiding place. But before they can finish, headlights approach. The man holds up the dead officer's badge. He tells the men in the car to move along, it's a police matter. But the men in the car identify themselves as undercover cops and offer to help. The man urges them to leave. Instead, they grow suspicious. At a safe distance, the cops pull off and radio for backup. They arm themselves and head back to take on their attackers. But when the cops arrive, they see no one. Wary of an ambush, they secure the crime scene. After searching the area, they rescue the handcuffed patrolman and find his partner's body. 5 days later, a previously unknown terror group claims credit for the assault. Since the attack was claimed by a terrorist organization, the investigation falls under the jurisdiction of the FBI. At the federal building in San Juan, agents study the group's letter to the media, which includes diagrams allegedly showing what occurred. The group claims the patrolman overreacted, forcing them to kill him in self-defense. FBI Special Agent Rick Hahn.
We thought it was very odd that they claimed credit for this incident, particularly since a police officer was killed. But the communique was detailed and in fact included a graphic drawing of the events as they claimed that they had occurred. And I think that they felt like they had to justify the fact that the officer had been killed.
This new terror group calls themselves the People's Puerto Rican Army, or EPB in Spanish. Their stated goal is to turn the U.S. Commonwealth into an independent communist country, which is contrary to what the vast majority of Puerto Ricans want.
those who wanted total independence were less than 5% of the island. So the representative numbers amongst the population that are in sync with the terrorists is a very small handful of people.
The letterhead includes the group's nickname, Macheteros.
Macheteros actually comes from the machete workers, the blue-collar people, basically, of the island, who they're claiming to represent. I think that they chose that name primarily to identify themselves with the unskilled laborers, the workers of Puerto Rico, the native people who would have been subjugated into things like chopping sugarcane.
Agent Hahn reviews the evidence so far. Police recovered empty 9mm shells, but no useful fingerprints or fibers. Sketches of the suspects proved to be too general to be of much use. With no real leads to go on, the FBI decides to watch several militants who preach violence, hoping they will lead them to the Macheteros. The police take a different approach, encouraging informants to infiltrate militant groups.
Well, the police of Puerto Rico, having lost one of their own, are extremely focused on trying to resolve this. And they are recruiting young people and putting them into what they consider to be radical organizations on college campuses to try and ferret out who may be part of the Macheteros.
2 months pass as the FBI and police continue to search for leads. Then, in October 1979, the Macheteros strike again. At the U.S. Customs building in San Juan, a high-powered bomb explodes. Fortunately, no one is injured.
The symbolism of the custom house is that it represents the U.S. government's presence there in Puerto Rico. Everything that comes imported into the island comes through the customs house.
In a letter to the media, the Macheteros take credit. In response, the FBI and police intensify their efforts. A month and a half later, at the Sabana Seca Navy base near San Juan, 18 unarmed Navy personnel ride a bus on a routine trip to work. A vehicle stops ahead, blocking their path. A van pulls out and begins firing on the bus with automatic weapons.
They fired right along the black band on a typical school bus, which is right about where the floor level is, so that even individuals that would be hiding on the floor to try and get cover would have taken rounds through the side of the bus.
The attack kills 2 people and wounds 9. Agent Hahn coordinates the investigation.
This attack was so audacious and so brutal that it clearly upped the ante in terms of what the terrorists were willing to do to the government personnel on the island. This was the first out-and-out planned homicide, and that's clearly what this was. So it clearly upped the ante.
Agents collect shell casings. They run the VIN number on the abandoned vehicle and find that it was stolen months earlier. They also check for fingerprints and fibers, but find none. The attackers have left no clues. The media receives a letter from the Macheteros proudly claiming credit. At the FBI lab in San Juan, technicians study the shell casings from the Navy bus shooting. They determined that the majority came from a .45 caliber Thompson submachine gun. The others came from a .223 caliber rifle. Technicians compare the unique markings on the shells to those used in other crimes, but can't find a match. Once again, agents have no real leads. Determined to track down the Macheteros, the FBI brings in dozens of additional agents from the mainland. The additional manpower makes it possible to put intense surveillance on militants believed to be linked to the Macheteros.
It's only by watching them, watching their activities, and determining exactly what they're up to on a daily basis that we're going to be able to ferret out who's really a terrorist and who's somebody that's just talking.
While the FBI tries to find the Macheteros, The Macheteros have already begun targeting the FBI. In Puerto Rico, a terror group known as the Macheteros murder a policeman and attack a bus full of unarmed Navy workers, killing 2 and wounding 9. With no real leads, the FBI takes a different approach. They decide to follow the money and try to determine how the terrorists get their funding. They spot a potential lead. A recent wave of armored car robberies. The highly organized robbers carry high-powered weapons, grab the money, and flee. The robbers leave behind no evidence. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario.
Abandoned vehicles that were recovered, we would trace to a name which turned out to be a fictitious name, and then it just got to a dead end.
Agents suspect that the Macheteros committed the robberies, but the crimes themselves provide no new leads. A month later, the Macheteros send a letter to the media claiming credit for a single $300,000 heist, though the FBI suspects they have committed many more. Through informants, the FBI begins hearing rumors that the Macheteros are led by a major Puerto Rican terrorist, Filiberto Ojeda. During the 1960s, Ojeda trained in Cuba as a communist agent. He returned to Puerto Rico and was arrested in 1970 for bombing tourist hotels, but he jumped bail and went into hiding. The FBI has been looking for him for the past 10 years. FBI Special Agent Rick Hahn.
He was the sort of individual who we thought was very capable of putting together an organization like the Macheteros.
If Ojeda leads the Macheteros, it helps explain their deadly discipline. The FBI increases its surveillance of militants suspected of having contact with Ojeda. 8 months later, while en route to a surveillance assignment, Agent Candelario hears on the radio that jet fighters have exploded at the Puerto Rican Air National Guard base. He heads straight for the base and is shocked by what he sees.
It looked like a war zone. Some of the agents that were Vietnam veterans were telling me how this reminded them of a combat zone.
The explosions destroyed 9 fighter jets and disabled 2 more. The damage is estimated at $45 million. Miraculously, no one was injured in the attack. Agents search the airbase for evidence. They find a machete painted with the letters EPB, an abbreviation of the formal name of the Macheteros. Agents believe the group left it behind as a calling card to taunt the FBI. Investigators determined that pipe bombs were placed in the jet's air intakes, exhaust pipes, and landing gear. They study pieces of the bombs but gain no new leads.
We interviewed every member of the Air National Guard to determine if this was an inside job.
But the investigators conclude that no one from the base was aiding the Macheteros. For agents, it is another dead end.
For many, many years, we've just collected a lot of evidence on the Macheteros, but we could not penetrate that organization.
Days later, sailors from the USS Pensacola take in the tourist attractions of San Juan, just as they're about to cross a bridge. Bullets rip through all 4 sailors. 1 is killed and 3 seriously injured. In a phone call to a radio station, the Macheteros take credit.
When I arrived to the scene, the young soldier or sailor was still laying there. My first reaction is, is thinking about the parents of that young sailor. He's here in Puerto Rico, he's unarmed, has nothing to do with the political situation in Puerto Rico, but he's a U.S. military, and that's the targets that the Macheteros selected. And it was just a tragic situation.
At the FBI lab, a technician examines the unique ejector marks on the empty shells.
It was determined that the weapon that was used was the .45 caliber machine gun that was used in Sabana Seca.
Agents have connected the weapon to at least 2 attacks, but are no closer to identifying members of the Macheteros. Devil's Night, the evening before Halloween. At 7:45 p.m., an event occurs that forever changes the FBI's attitude toward the Macheteros. A huge explosion rocks the FBI's office. FBI Special Agent Jose Rodriguez.
The explosion was so loud that they suspected that it was a bomb inside the building. Because I was a bomb technician, I was one of the first people called.
Surveying the scene, Agent Rodriguez notices that the window glass has been blown in, not out. That means that the explosion must have happened outside. He searches near the building for evidence.
I started looking around, and I was able to find the rocket motor cover with the fins intact in the back parking lot.
He recognizes the object as part of an American law rocket, short for light anti-tank weapon. Agent Rodriguez discovers that the serial number is still intact, so the rocket should be traceable. A law rocket has a range of only 350 meters, so it must have been fired nearby. Agents interview everyone in the surrounding area and locate one woman who says she saw the attackers.
This lady said that this guy came into her yard. She came out the door. He told her to get back inside. He puts the law rocket on his shoulder and fires the law rocket at the building.
The witness says the man fled in an SUV, which was followed by a car. She describes both vehicles, and agents begin searching the surrounding neighborhoods. The FBI quickly finds the 2 suspect vehicles nearby.
People that lived in the neighborhood told us that they had seen people come dump the vehicle. One of them, the person actually gotten out of the vehicle and wiped the door, like he was trying to remove evidence of fingerprints from the door of the vehicle, which made it a very highly suspect vehicle.
Anybody else?
FBI Special Agent Marlene Hunter.
Think of anything else?
We started interviewing the people to get descriptions of the individuals that left the vehicle and just ensure that the vehicle was preserved until the agents could start processing it for evidence.
While interviewing witnesses, agents learn from the media that the Macheteros have claimed responsibility.
We took it extremely personal because it was the first time that the Macheteros had attacked the FBI specifically, and we wanted to solve that case. We wanted to charge the Macheteros.
To do that, agents must find a way to penetrate their secretive world. The Puerto Rican terrorist organization known as the Macheteros has brought their fight to the FBI's doorstep with a rocket attack on their office in San Juan. Now agents work around the clock to follow up leads. The FBI asks the U.S. Army to run a trace on the rocket's serial number, according to FBI Special Agent Jose Rodriguez.
In other words, where did it come from? How did the Macheteros get an American-made law rocket? The military did an outstanding job in tracing it. However, it was told to us that they suspected that some of that lot of law rockets had been left in Vietnam once the Americans had pulled out. And in tracing that, also we found that a ship had carried a large load of American-made weapons from North Vietnam to Cuba at one time. And we suspected that possibly that rocket had have gone to Cuba, and then the Macheteros had obtained it from there.
In the FBI garage, agents processed the 2 vehicles believed used in the rocket attack. The vehicle identification and license plate numbers lead nowhere, and there are no obvious fingerprints. Agents look for evidence lost in crevices or fingerprints left while doing repairs. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario.
We decided that we're going to do this and we're going to make sure that we get any piece of evidence that we can off that vehicle.
Under a door paneling, agents find a single fingerprint.
It's clear. Yeah. It's a good one.
FBI Special Agent Marlene Hunter.
The fact that you were able to lift a print off of a getaway vehicle was very exciting. It was a great break.
The FBI matches the fingerprint to known radical Abelino Gonzalez. The fingerprint alone isn't enough to convict him. The FBI considers watching him, but fears it will be a waste of manpower, since they suspect he will remain low-key in the wake of the attack.
So you have to have a team of approximately 6 people, at least, in 6 different cars, to be effective, and it eats up your resources. So one of the particular investigative techniques that was being discussed a lot was wiretap, electronic surveillance. But where do we go? Do we wiretap Abelino? Do we look for a better subject? Et cetera, et cetera.
In the garage, agents begin taking apart the SUV, which they believe was used to transport the anti-tank rocket. Deep in a pocket in the driver's door, one agent makes a critical discovery.
Because it is so humid in Puerto Rico, if you leave paper documents, they'll become sticky and they stick to everything. In this final pocket, we found the corner of a traffic citation.
The torn bit of traffic ticket includes the entire ticket ID number.
That was a very nice stroke of luck that the portion with the number on it was preserved.
At Puerto Rico's Department of Motor Vehicles, Agent Candelario tracks down the number. He discovers that the original ticket was issued to Pedro Ramirez Cesar Almodovar for an expired inspection sticker. He writes down Almodovar's home address and gets a copy of the original license photo. Agent Candelario has spent hours watching Macheteros suspects, but he doesn't recognize the man. The photo could break the case wide open, or it could be yet another dead end. At the FBI office in San Juan, agents hunt for official records on Pedro Almodovar.
We searched everything associated with the name, birth records, we searched tax records.
Agents find one record with the same name and birth date.
It was a dead baby's birth certificate that was used to get this identification. So we knew this person didn't exist as an adult anyway.
When the name proves false, agents concentrate on the photo.
That photo was copied probably 1,000 times, sent everywhere to see if somebody could identify that person.
But agents can't find anyone who recognizes the man. Agent Rodriguez goes to the address on Almodovar's driver's license. One address leads to another, where a woman with a Cuban accent answers the door. She insists she doesn't know anyone named Pedro Almodovar.
And I took the picture out of my pocket and placed it in front of her face and said, "Do you know this individual?" And it was as if she'd seen a ghost. She almost fell back when she saw the picture and immediately said, no, I don't know that individual.
Agents are confident she isn't telling the truth.
I knew that she knew who that person was.
Back at the FBI office, investigators run the woman's name through a database of possible terrorist supporters. In a major breakthrough, the computer indicates she's related by marriage to the family of Filiberto Ojeda, the suspected leader of the Macheteros. Agents now believe that the man in the photo is actually Ojeda.
We compared the photographs of Filiberto Ojeda Ríos to Pedro Almodovar. There was a resemblance. Nobody could identify him positively.
Agents decide against watching the Cuban woman. They suspect their visit has been reported to the Macheteros, who won't go near her again for months. Instead, agents decide to put intensive surveillance on Abelino Gonzalez, the radical whose fingerprint was found on the getaway car. 2 months have passed since the rocket attack, and agents believe the terrorists may feel safe to begin meeting again. The surveillance teams take great pains to avoid being detected.
The rule of thumb on that team was don't get burned. If we pick up an individual and we lose them in the first half hour, then we'll pick them up the next day.
2 weeks into the surveillance, agents watch Gonzalez drive in circles around a parking lot, apparently trying to determine if he's being followed.
They were trying to detect surveillance. It was an exciting moment. We were observing excellent tradecraft on the part of these two macheteros.
Finally, Gonzalez stops and picks up an older man.
The decision was made to drop Avelino and concentrate on the person that he was meeting to try to identify him.
Agents follow the older man to a second-story apartment an hour from San Juan. Investigators rent an apartment across the street and watch the man. They check the name on his apartment and car registration, but find out that it's false.
And we were doing surveillances on him for a few days, and he was very, very watchful for surveillance activity. He would use different public phones, and he would use different one every time he'd make a call, even in the same evening.
To identify the man, agents come up with a creative plan to obtain his fingerprints. The next time, the older man makes a phone call and leaves. An FBI agent moves in and cuts off the handset. Even if the suspect notices the cut cord, agents don't believe it will tip him off.
We have vandalism here all the time in Puerto Rico, and nobody's going to think anything of it.
FBI technicians process the payphone receiver and are able to pull fingerprints from it.
The FBI lab came back, said that the latent fingerprint that was discovered on that telephone was that of Filiberto Ojeda Ríos.
The FBI has found the alleged leader of the Macheteros.
It was like Christmas come early. I mean, we had confirmed everything that we suspected, and that's when the case was designated a major case of the FBI.
Agents could arrest Ojeda on an old warrant for jumping bail. Instead, they decide to continue watching him to try to identify other members of the Macheteros. The FBI wants to take down the entire group and bring peace to this troubled island. A Puerto Rican terror group known as the Macheteros wages an unpopular war for independence, attacking local police, the American military, and the FBI. Although they claim to be freeing the country from American oppression, less than 5% of the island's population supports their cause. After months of intense surveillance of suspected members of the Macheteros, agents have identified the leader of the organization, Filiberto Ojeda, who has been a fugitive for more than a decade. The FBI continues their efforts to identify more members of the group to bring them all to justice. A month after identifying the terror leader, the FBI gets an unexpected break. At an office building in San Juan, police respond to a burglary. An entire floor of the building had been broken into. In one of the offices, authorities found some suspicious documents that appeared to belong to a terrorist group. They called the FBI. FBI agents searched through the office's filing cabinets. FBI Special Agent Marlene Hunter can't believe what they find.
Fairly quickly, it became clear that it was the central archives of the Macheteros organization. Not only their archives for historical purposes, but also records regarding future actions that they were going to take. Another interesting find were minutes of meetings that went all the way back to the date they were formed in 1976. It was a gold mine.
In a chilling moment, Agent Hunter discovers that the terrorists have compiled detailed information on individual FBI agents.
There were files with FBI names and their family members, where their children went to school.
The threatening discovery underscores the danger to agents and their families.
It really made you realize that maybe you needed to not take the same route all the time. You needed to always assume that someone could be following you.
Other documents describe the group's terrorist activities, but names for places and people are coded. The FBI takes the files as evidence and attempts to crack the codes. With the evidence collected so far, the FBI gets a judge's authorization to listen to payphones used by Filiberto Ojeda, the alleged leader of the Macheteros. As with their documents, the Macheteros also use code names when speaking on the telephone. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario.
We heard a lot of conversations where the codename Aguila and Aguila Blanca were mentioned. But in the contents of the conversation, we couldn't really tell what Aguila or Aguila Blanca was. Aguila means eagle, and Aguila Blanca is white eagle.
Agents suspect Aguila refers to a person, and Aguila Blanca is an operation that person conducted. Whenever Ojeda arranges to meet someone, agents follow in an effort to determine the new person's identity. If possible, agents retrieve objects the person has touched and send them to the lab to be fingerprinted. Agents use the fingerprint results, surveillances, and wiretaps to match terrorist code names to real names. Agent Hunter leads the effort.
I always liked jigsaw puzzles when I was a kid, and this was like one big jigsaw puzzle. We had multiple layers of code names that we were able to piece together through careful coordination of the physical surveillance logs with the electronic surveillance logs and independent investigation.
The FBI identifies more members of the Macheteros one by one. Agents use the new information to get authorization to put a microphone inside Ojeda's apartment. When agents see Ojeda leave one night, they enter to plant the bug. They find the interior doors partly open. Agents recognize this as a clever counter-surveillance tactic.
Their MO to protect themselves was to leave interior doors open at a certain gap, and they would measure it. And in case that door was moved by an agent inserting a microphone in that residence, they would know somebody had been in here.
Agents carefully reset each door to avoid tipping off Ojeda.
We didn't want him to move. We were afraid if he moved, that we'd never find him again.
At the FBI office, Agent Hunter continues her efforts to decode a list of names and phone numbers from the Macheteros files. Agents believe the phone numbers have been encoded through a mathematical formula. If the FBI can crack that code, they will have phone numbers for all the Macheteros. Agents capture a real phone number electronically at the same time that they overhear Ojeda call the man by his code name. Agent Hunter uses the real phone number and the corresponding coded phone number to try to figure out the formula.
I was able to play around with the sequence of the numbers, and it wasn't an easy code. It wasn't, like sometimes they add 2 to everything or subtract 1 from everything.
Her determination pays off. Agent Hunter makes a breakthrough and rushes to tell the team.
I went over where they were, and I said, "You can't believe this, I just broke the telephone number code." Oh, they were thrilled. Everybody was thrilled with that. That allowed us to decode all the telephone numbers, and we could get the real number, and we could say who the real person connected to that code name was. So we were able to sort of unmask and figure this group out.
With the codes cracked and listening devices in place, the FBI overhears the Macheteros arguing over money. FBI Special Agent Jose Rodriguez.
Ojeda wanted to use the money to further the cause of the organization and to establish better relations with the Cubans in Cuba. They had sent, I think it was $2.2 million to the Cubans as a show of good faith.
Agents are puzzled by the huge amounts of money that the Macheteros seem to have.
But we got $6.8 million that the organization is quarreling over, and we wondered, where did they get this money?
Agents totaled the losses of all the recent bank robberies and armored car heists in Puerto Rico, but they don't come close to $6.8 million. Agents send an urgent bulletin to all FBI offices asking if anyone has any unsolved multi-million-dollar robberies. An answer comes from Hartford, Connecticut. A year earlier, at an armored car depot, a guard gave co-workers a knockout drug and stole $7.2 million. Agents in San Juan note that the guard in the so-called Big Sleep heist is Puerto Rican. They suspect that the Machitero operation, codenamed Aguila Blanca, is really the Big Sleep heist.
We decided to pull more tapes, previously transcribed conversations where Aguila and Aguila Blanca were mentioned. And now, with the context in mind that this could be the armored car robbery, it started to make sense. The Macheteros had committed this robbery. They hadn't claimed responsibility for it yet, though.
It no longer was just an investigation of the law rocket attack on our building. It was a group that had gone to the United States to steal $7 million, which at the time was the second largest robbery in U.S. history.
Prosecutors advised the FBI that they would prefer to try the Macheteros in Connecticut for the Big Sleep heist. They worried that a murder trial in Puerto Rico would fail because jurors would be too frightened.
It was going to be difficult to get a jury that would be willing to convict, assuming the evidence was right, a member of the Macheteros. The Macheteros, you mentioned that name in Puerto Rico, and it instilled fear.
The FBI decides to continue its surveillance until it gets enough evidence to convict the Macheteros of the Big Sleep heist. But before the FBI gets the additional evidence it needs, Ojeda suddenly disappears. Agents fear that Ojeda has somehow caught on to their surveillance. They will have to get their additional evidence elsewhere. The FBI decides to focus on another target, Ojeda's right-hand man, Juan Segarra.
Juan Segarra Palmer was a very active member of the organization, what I would call a shaker and a mover. He was the one that made things happen. He was the brains of the organization.
The FBI has a microphone inside Segarra's house, but it has gone dead. Agents watch Segarra and his family drive away and move in to repair the bug, leaving the front door unlocked. The agents fix the broken microphone and prepare to leave. Suddenly, Agent Candelario gets an urgent message.
When I am wearing an earpiece with a radio unit, and I hear the green station wagon is coming up to the residence. This is the aircraft is calling this out.
An FBI plane has spotted the vehicle of a known member of the Macheteros. He pulls up to the house and notices the unlocked door.
When we heard he was in front of the door coming in, we went to the bedrooms. Myself and another agent went into the closet. The closets had no doors.
The agents know that the Macheteros are almost always armed. They hear footsteps coming closer. If the terrorist comes into the bedroom, the confrontation could turn deadly. Agents repair a hidden microphone in the home of a suspected member of the Macheteros, Juan Segarra. But just as they finish, a terrorist enters. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario and another agent hide in a closet, guns ready.
It's obviously a member of the Macheteros, a dangerous terrorist organization coming into this safe house to protect it. We don't know if he's going to come around that corner with a weapon. I'm not going to tell you that we weren't scared. We could hear him speak. He would say, "Aquí no hay nadie. Is there anybody here?" We didn't answer. And he'd go to the other door. "Aquí no hay nadie."
The terrorist begins to enter the bedroom.
We have no closet doors. We're in an open space. All this guy had to do was walk in and look to his left, and he would have seen us. And we don't know what would have occurred at that point. Had he assaulted us, then there's only one way to go there. We would have shot him.
But then he leaves. While the terrorist is in front of the house, the agents escape out the back. Later, agents listen worriedly as the visitor tells Juan Segarra what happened. The terrorists begin searching the house, If they find the microphone, it could ruin years of hard work. FBI Special Agent Jose Rodriguez.
What's going to happen to the investigation? Is it burned? Or are all of them going to flee, go underground?
But the terrorists fail to find the microphone. Once again, Puerto Rico's high crime rate helps cover the FBI's tracks.
We did hear them conversing about this incident. They don't know if it was FBI or not. Could have been a burglar.
Agents watch Segarra go out at night to make phone calls, leaving his wife and child at home. Through their listening devices, they hear him make calls to his mistress in Boston about laundering money.
She was definitely a player in the organization. She was hiding money for him, and she was also exchanging money that they suspected to be hot for clean bills up in Boston.
Agents have just identified a major part of the money trail from the big sleep heist. They apply for authorization to put a listening device on the woman's phone. With new evidence from Segarra, agents begin planning the end game, the takedown of the Macheteros. They want to arrest all the suspects at the same time.
We didn't want someone to make a call to somebody else, say they hit me over here. So we didn't want one team to hit one place and go here and hit another place. We wanted simultaneous hits on these houses.
During the arrests, agents also went searches of more than 30 locations all across the island. To make it all happen, the FBI will need nearly 300 agents. In preparation for the takedown, the FBI secretly flies hundreds of agents and their equipment to a Navy base in Puerto Rico.
We brought down in helicopters, we brought down Suburbans, the HRT brought down all their gear. It was very massive movement of FBI personnel, something I've not seen again in my career.
But the FBI has to put the raids on hold when the number 2 Machitero suddenly goes to Mexico.
Juan Segarra Palmer was a very important individual in this case. A lot of the evidence that would point to his guilt would also point to the guilt of others. We needed him at trial.
Hundreds of agents wait for Segarra to return to U.S. soil. From the wiretap on his mistress's phone, investigators know that Segarra plans to return soon. A tense week passes. Finally, Segarra leaves a message on her answering machine.
He tells her, I'm in Dallas, and here's my phone number where I can be reached.
The FBI uses a reverse directory and finds that the number belongs to a payphone at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. Dallas FBI agents find Segarra by a payphone, waiting for his mistress to call back. They plan to arrest him at the same moment as the rest of the raid. In Puerto Rico, agents get into position to hit dozens of locations simultaneously.
Here's where the adrenaline started pumping. This was a culmination of a lot of intense work on the parts of a lot of people.
At the home of Machetero leader Filiberto Ojeda, FBI SWAT and members of the elite FBI hostage rescue team surround the building and order Ojeda to come out and surrender.
They were calling him by name, telling him that we had an arrest warrant, asking him to come out, give himself up.
Ojeda doesn't answer. SWAT finally decides to go in and get him.
A burst of automatic fire came down the stairwell. One of those rounds ricocheted off the wall and struck the team leader in the eye.
Agents pull the injured man to safety and call for a medevac helicopter. They know that soon they'll have to go back inside to confront a terrorist who won't go down without a fight and won't hesitate to kill. The FBI attempts to arrest the leader of a deadly terrorist group. But he opens fire, hitting an HRT member in the eye. After evacuating the wounded man, FBI agents continue to urge the terrorist leader to surrender. FBI Special Agent Jose Rodriguez.
Finally, he started coming down the stairs. When he did, he had a Uzi slung over his right shoulder, and his left hand could not be seen. He had his left hand down to the side of his pants.
terrorist leader Filiberto Ojeda continues slowly down the stairs.
As he got down to the base of the stairs, he raised his left hand, and the HRT member saw that he had a semi-automatic handgun. HRT member yelled for him to drop it. When he didn't, the HRT member had fired 2 times, and he saw Ojeda buckle, and he thought that he had struck Ojeda in the chest.
The shot actually hit Ojeda's handgun. Although unhurt, he gives up. In Dallas, Juan Segarra is arrested without incident. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario escorts Ojeda to jail.
I told him I'm a Puerto Rican and I have as much right to live here as you do. And he told me, yes, but you're the enemy. If I have to kill you, I will.
Over the next 3 years, Ojeda's attorneys do everything possible to postpone his trial.
The case was delayed and delayed and delayed, primarily by the defense, because they filed motion after motion after motion. Ojeda Ríos was in jail for a total of 36 months, primarily based upon defense motions.
After all the legal wrangling, his attorneys now claim he must be released on bond because his right to a speedy trial has been violated. The claim goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court rules that Ojeda must be released to await trial. Over the FBI's protests, Ojeda goes free, wearing an electronic monitoring bracelet.
We knew that wasn't going to hold him. Of course, he wasn't in our custody at that point. He's the responsibility of the pretrial services.
While awaiting trial, Ojeda gives speeches to try to build support for the Macheteros.
Now he can brag about the Macheteros. Now he's no longer covert, he's overt.
While Ojeda's attorneys delay, 4 other Macheteros, including Juan Segarra, are convicted in Hartford, Connecticut for their roles in the Big Sleep heist. A year after his release on bond, Ojeda makes a bold statement to the media and cuts off his electronic bracelet. He disappears into the rugged mountains to resume his fight to turn the island into a communist dictatorship. 2 years later, a federal court in Connecticut convicts Ojeda in absentia of bank robbery and conspiracy. With his conviction, 14 of the top Macheteros have been found guilty. While Ojeda is at large, the FBI keeps up the pressure to find him. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario.
I'm confident that he'll be arrested again because we did it once before, you know, and when we, like they say, we always get our man, and I think that time is on our side.
In September of 2005, the FBI locates Ojeda. He is shot and killed after firing on agents. The Macheteros' reign of terror has come to an end.
And unless you're committed to go after them with as much commitment as they got, you're not going to get them. They were Macheteros 24 hours a day.
The trials also help reveal the truth about the Macheteros.
These people don't just want independence for Puerto Rico. These people want something much bigger than that. They want to convert Puerto Rico into the next Cuba.
Today, through democratic elections, the people of Puerto Rico retain the right to decide whether to become a state, remain a commonwealth, or become independent. Thanks to the FBI, they remain free to determine their own fate. Robbery, torture, murder. A drug cartel will do anything to protect their business, no matter who's caught in the crossfire. The FBI and NYPD work together to fight back, risking their own lives by going undercover to unlock the secrets of deadly drug gangs, to bring them down from the inside.
When the streets of New York flooded with crack cocaine in the 1980s, a wave of violence threatened to drown the city. Colombian cartels brought the coke in and ran their operations with an iron fist. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Agents somehow had to infiltrate a complex crime ring, protected by a code of silence. Going head-to-head with killers, any misstep would be fatal.
Crack cocaine. Cheap, easy to make, and highly addictive. When it hits the streets, violent crime follows. Most of the bloodshed occurs at the street level, among users and dealers. But innocent people suffer too. NYPD detective Richard Eppolito worked narcotics.
There's one gentleman that owned a Chinese restaurant. Came out one night, and there was a couple of individuals involved in drugs, and they'll do anything they can to get their next fix. Well, this particular gentleman had gold teeth, and they thought nothing of killing him. They just shot him dead, and while he's down on the ground, they pulled out their switchblades and they started prying his teeth out.
In New York, the crack epidemic began in the late 80s. NYPD Lieutenant Mike Garrity.
It was an extremely violent time. You had turf wars. You had people who just controlled a certain corner. If you set up to make a sale on that corner, there'd be a drive-by shooting. We were losing our youth. We were losing innocent bystanders to drive-bys. Every one of the index crimes went up. It was out of control back then.
But arresting users and dealers individually does little to slow the onslaught.
You know, it's never ending. It's just a constant flow. For every one or two guys you take down, there's others to replace them.
The only way to stem the flow of narcotics is to find the organizations that import the drugs and dismantle them. To do this, the Department of Justice creates the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. Known as C-13, the task force is made up of NYPD detectives and FBI agents. They know exactly who they're up against, according to Supervisory Special Agent Fernando Llanos.
In New York in the early 90s, the situation was that you had Colombians in control of the drug trade.
The two main drug gangs are Colombia's Medellin and Cali cartels. When the cartels ship drugs into the country, they smuggle them in by packing them among valid cargo, according to U.S. Customs Special Agent Phil Spinelli.
With containerized cargo, you can conceal the narcotics in just about any type of cargo that you ship into the United States. They've liquefied narcotics and tried to put it into bottles. They've disguised it as dominoes. They've put it into cans of guava paste and cans of peaches where the peaches were completely sealed.
And they ship it in through New York City, one of the busiest ports in the world.
In the New York area, we receive approximately 5,000 containers a day. Each of those containers probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 18, 20, maybe 30,000 pounds of cargo. So it's extremely difficult. It's like finding a needle in a haystack.
When the drugs hit New York, they are distributed across the country. The task force is determined to shut off this supply of drugs and break the backs of the cartels.
Our purpose in the task force was to build cases, try to monitor these individuals, try to infiltrate them, and take them down.
To do so, Detective Eppolito immerses himself undercover in the shadowy world of drug traffickers, and he needs help.
The most productive cases involve confidential informants because they know what's going on. They're already on the inside.
Once the detective develops trust with an informant, doors begin to open.
I had one particular confidential informant that was extremely reliable.
In December 1991, the informant tells Eppolito about a man named Eduardo. He says Eduardo deals in cloned cell phones and might be connected to the Medellin cartel. He knows the Colombian cartels desperately want to do business with the American mafia.
They felt traditional organized crime was here a long time. They know all the ins and outs, all the tricks, they have all the contacts. And that's basically what they were looking for.
This could be the opportunity Eppolito's been looking for to get inside the cartel. He decides to go undercover, posing as a member of the mafia in an effort to orchestrate a large-scale drug purchase from the cartel. The detective asks the informant to set up a meeting with Eduardo and introduce him as Tony Romano, his undercover identity. The informant goes to Eduardo and tells him about Tony Romano. Eduardo seems interested in a mafia connection and agrees to meet. But he warns the informant, if it's a setup, there'll be hell to pay. Undercover work is among the most dangerous assignments an officer takes up. If he's identified as a cop, he and his informant will likely be killed. Every meeting is scripted so the undercover knows what to say and what to avoid.
An undercover operation is a carefully orchestrated deal. We just don't send the undercover out there. He doesn't operate in a vacuum. What we do, we have pre-meets before we go out. We have tech plans. We go over the things. We try to cover every scenario that possibly could happen. And when we decide to go out, the safety of the undercover is paramount. We have people that are assigned strictly to watch the undercover, provide security for them. You try to control the meet location. You're going to pick a location that you're somewhat familiar with.
C-13 decides to have Eppolito meet Eduardo in a local bar.
We set up outside, we surveilled, them arriving and going in, but we also sent agents and detectives, inside.
The key is never appearing too anxious.
It was best not to jump right into the drugs, because a lot of times when you do that, they raise up on you, and they think you're the cops or the feds, and they back off. So I figured I'd start off small, start off low, and try to do some cellular fraud business with this guy.
Eppolito suggests a deal for cloned cell phones, reprogrammed phones that use an unwitting customer's service for free. He says he needs them for his mob activities.
And I also told him that I don't want to jump right into the drug aspect because I don't know who you are. So let's do this, and if we both come out of it okay, we can move on. So a little bit of psychology there.
Eduardo agrees to clone the phones for a price. After the meet, Eppolito debriefs the task force. By now, intelligence agents have uncovered more details about the drug dealer.
Eduardo was considered like a street dealer or a mule. He wasn't well placed within any organization. He's a guy that would broker deals, try to hook you up with somebody, stuff like that. He definitely wasn't our main focus in this whole investigation. We wanted to use him as a stepping stone to go higher up or go up the ladder.
Claiming he's satisfied with the cloned phone deal, Eppolito takes the case to the next level. He sets up another deal with Eduardo, this time for drugs. The detective has to maintain his mobster image.
You basically have to show credibility. You have to be able to convince the people that you're who you say you are. In doing so, it means you have to walk the walk, talk the talk.
Authorities need to play it cool. They don't want to order too much cocaine right away, which could tip Eduardo off.
In fact, that's a red flag. So what we decided to do was just order a small amount. So 1 kilogram of cocaine is what we ordered from Eduardo.
Eduardo comes through with a single kilo. A good sign he may be connected to a cartel. Undercover officers follow Eduardo after the deal. They need to determine if the man's really connected to a cartel. Someone who can lead them up the chain of command, or just another small-time dealer who cannot help further the investigation.
Nobody knows, first of all, if in fact we really do have a narcotics smuggling organization. There seems to be hints of it, there seems to be smoke, and what we're trying to do is see if in fact there is a fire there.
Investigators spot a man and a woman who might be associated with Eduardo going in and out of a house. Hopefully authorities can ID the pair later. This sort of meticulous and time-consuming work is required to gather intelligence and build a case against the cartels who operate under a strictly enforced code of silence. The C-13 task force also checks the purity percentage of the cocaine Eduardo sold them.
It was extremely high quality. It was in the high 90s, which was like telling you that you're basically into the source, which is what we needed.
Pure cocaine means no middlemen have cut it down yet. It looks like Eduardo is a good lead into the cartels.
At that point, we realized that we had somebody that could possibly take us to the types of individuals, of drug traffickers, that the task force was geared to target.
It's the first milestone in what will be a long and dangerous investigation. In 1991, New York's C-13 task force tries to infiltrate a Colombian drug cartel, beginning with a low-level broker named Eduardo. After one successful cocaine buy, Eduardo asks undercover detective Richard Eppolito to meet the drug dealers Eduardo represents.
So he orchestrated a meet with a female individual known as, the street name was Monica. They would never give anybody their real name for fear they would be identified.
As with every meet, backup agents cover Eppolito. They recognize Monica as the woman seen at the house Eduardo entered after the first buy.
When I was introduced to Monica, it just meant stepping up one extra step in a ladder.
Eppolito must constantly maintain the charade, in character as Tony Romano, a member of the Mafia. He explains he has connections in customs and can move shipments through the ports. Agents spot a man watching the meet. They realize he's the other person seen at the house, Special Agent Fernando Llanos.
Colombians, as sophisticated as they were, oftentimes would conduct counter-surveillance. This was, a standard operating procedure for them. So we were wary of individuals that could be looking out to, for law enforcement.
It's a preliminary meeting. No real decisions are made. But Monica appears interested. She wants to meet again to discuss details with her partner, Willie. When she and Eduardo leave, backup tails them to ID Monica's car. Later, in an effort to ID her, the task force has a uniformed officer conduct a routine traffic stop on the car. The driver is the man who watched the meet in the restaurant. The officer gets IDs on the pair. The man is Gustavo Valencia, and Monica's real name is Rocio Londaño. Investigators run the names and discover both are involved with Colombian cartels, the vicious worldwide leaders of the drug trade. With this information, the C-13 task force opens an official federal conspiracy case and brings in U.S. Customs. From the reports, Customs agent Phil Spinelli confirms Valencia's street name is Willie.
Willie had been identified as being at least a distant cousin of Pablo Escobar, who was the head of the major cartel at that time.
Escobar runs the Medellin cartel, the most violent gang in the history of Colombian drug trade. He offers bounties on the heads of Colombian police officers, maintaining power by killing whoever crosses him. Since Willie's related to Escobar, the C-13 investigation takes on new urgency. They might now be able to take the investigation all the way to the Colombian kingpin, Lieutenant Mike Garrity.
Ideally, in any investigation, you take it from point A to point Z. And that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to get from the lowest level to the highest level. And once we met Willie with his connections, we figured we were right on target during the course of this investigation.
While undercover, Ippolito is constantly under the threat of death. He can never slip out of character. Tony Romano, the role he is playing, supposedly knows how the ports work, but Ippolito doesn't. In order to maintain his disguise, customs agents must give the detective a crash course on international transportation.
It was extremely important for Richie to be knowledgeable about the ports. You have to remember, what Richie is posing as is a wise guy, a member of a mafia family. He's also purporting to have connections down at the piers, so he can guarantee the safe passage of the narcotics through customs. The only way he can convince Willie and Monica of this is to have enough knowledge of the inner workings of the pier, so when he explains to them how he intends to carry out the caper, it will be believable. It will be true. It will be accurate.
Because the cartels are sophisticated enough to run their own background checks, the task force creates a full identity for the fictitious Tony Romano, complete with a long criminal record. Everyone working the case knows how important it is to hide Ippolito's true identity. They recall that in February 1985, decorated DEA Special Agent Enrique Camarena was ID'd as law enforcement by the Mexican drug gang he infiltrated. Gang members kidnapped him, tortured him, then stabbed him to death. The C-13 task force wires Ippolito to get incriminating conversations on tape. They are all aware that if Ippolito is discovered, it could be a death sentence. In previous meetings, no one has patted him down. But that could change.
In this type of work, it's very easy to explain them finding a gun on you. I mean, that's part of doing business. You're gonna have a gun on you. But it's extremely difficult to try to explain that little wire sticking up tape to your chest.
Above all, Ippolito has to become his character fully to reduce suspicion.
And I had to dress like the wise guys. I had to talk like the wise guys. I had to have a flashy car. I had to have the jewelry.
Soon, Ippolito meets Willie. As he moves up the organization ladder, the criminals become more savvy. It gets tougher to fool them.
We're talking about people doing a substantial period of time in jail if caught. Therefore, everybody has a sixth sense. Their very existence depends on whether or not they have a sixth sense or an antenna that goes up. And they're there to question Richie. They're there to make some determination. Is he somebody who is reliable, dependable, and can they do business with him?
There they are.
The task force listens in and covers Ippolito.
And they're basically your buddies, too. They don't want to see you get hurt. So it's a good feeling knowing that there are guys there to back you up.
The task force slowly makes its way toward the heart of the cartel, knowing that at any moment, a single mistake could be deadly. Undercover detective Richard Ippolito, posing as a mafioso named Tony Romano, meets with Colombian drug cartel members. He's backed up by other members of the C-13 task force, some of whom act as mafia bodyguards. Ippolito tells suspects Monica and Willie that if they can get the cocaine to the New York docks, he can move it past customs into his secure warehouse for distribution. Customs agent Phil Spinelli.
That was very appealing to the Colombians because they need somebody to pick up these containers full of narcotics at the piers.
After the meeting, undercover agents follow the suspects. They note an interesting aspect of Colombian drug traffickers, according to Supervisory Special Agent Fernando Llanos.
They took a low-key approach. Colombians did not drive around in Mercedes-Benzes and Porsches and flashy, expensive vehicles. They didn't dress particularly in an expensive way. They didn't particularly wear expensive jewelry, a lot of gold and so forth. They made every effort to remain low-key, and we saw that with Monica and Willie.
From additional sources, investigators developed more intelligence on the couple.
It was believed that they had loads in the past entrusted to them that had been lost. And therefore they lost favor, they lost money, and they were obligated to the cartels.
When Willie and Monica lost the drugs, the cartels made one thing very clear. Make good on the debt or die. That pressure should help move the task force's case forward.
Of course, the people that are indebted to the cartel are looking to get out of debt with the cartel and are willing to take more chances to hopefully make a bigger score to be able to get even.
Through Monica and Willie, investigators expand the investigation and pierce the cartel's secret world, according to Detective Eppolito.
One of the goals was to establish enough probable cause to get court-ordered wiretaps to further enhance the case, gather intelligence, basically know what the bad guy's going to do before they actually do it.
Because the couple discussed drug trafficking with Eppolito, investigators have no trouble getting warrants to tap their phones. The task force uses the taps to determine if the cartel believes Eppolito is who he says he is.
They felt free talking on the phones. They would discuss a lot of their arrangements, what they had in mind, what they wanted to do, the big mafioso that they met.
On tape, Monica and Willie tell their cartel contacts that Tony Romano is a safe bet.
We could listen to their calls they were making to Colombia, discussing the meeting they just had with him, and we were able to gather insight that you would not be able to gather otherwise into what their thinking was.
The cartel has taken the bait and is ready for the next step. They send another higher associate to meet with the mafioso.
There's also a female that came into the picture named Margola. She was very attractive, Colombian national. She was the niece of a notorious drug dealer out there who they used to refer to as Ivan the Terrible. He was responsible for the deaths of approximately 19 national police officers.
The task force knows Ivan the Terrible specializes in killing cops. Usually in a torture chamber he had built at his compound in Bogota, Colombia. Eppolito must continue playing his role and needs to convince Margola that he's a mafia wise guy or risk being killed. And he's the perfect cop to do it.
He grew up with some, quote, mob people. He knew how they acted. He had the looks. He knew the way to act. He knew the way to dress. And you give Richie a little bit of leeway. You give him a script and he could play the role to a T, and he was absolutely excellent in playing his role.
Eppolito notices one of Margola's associates has a gun and must decide whether to call for help from backup. He takes the risk and stays in character. He doesn't want to blow the case. Backup knows what to do if anyone gets suspicious of them.
Is that possibly somebody is making us? What we would do is probably step a little bit further back from the set. So they would think that to a certain extent they are seeing ghosts, where in fact there were no ghosts.
In the end, it appears Margola believes Tony Romano can provide a safe route for drug running. Slowly, the task force makes its way deeper into the cartel.
We were piecemealed individuals. First we met Eduardo, then we met Monica, then we met Willie, then it was Margolis. They kept introducing different people. The way it works, those people would report back to the people back in Colombia, and they'd say what's going on.
It seems to be going well. But Eppolito can never let down his guard. He is in constant danger. If the cartel suspects anything, they could send assassins and hit Eppolito at any time, not just at a meeting.
They could wait, get you at a later time, let you think everything's okay. Next time you show up, you get one in the back of the head. I feel very uppity, very alert. It's just natural adrenaline, I guess, that kicks in. There's a bit of excitement involved. It's challenging. It's dangerous.
Any mistake could mean another murder of a dedicated law enforcement officer. New York investigators try to infiltrate Pablo Escobar's Medellin drug cartel and dismantle it. As the case builds, the C-13 task force puts more resources into it, including an office for undercover detective Richard Eppolito's mafia character.
We also had an undercover office in Floral Park, Queens. Then it was wired for both video and audio to document meets and gather evidence.
It's the best place for monitored meetings, according to Lieutenant Mike Garrity.
We were able to bring the people there. We were able to record the conversations. We were able to videotape every one of these conversations.
When Monica and Willie show up to the office for a meeting, they're watched the entire time. FBI Special Agent Mary Setzer acts as Eppolito's receptionist.
We met in the office approximately 2 or 3 times a month. My responsibilities were to answer the door when the subjects arrived, announce them to the undercover, and then usher them into the office.
She's there for protection, but she's also part of the act.
Richie frequently tried to ease the tension by making fake phone calls to me from the office during his meetings. He would pick up the telephone and say, "Make sure that order arrives tomorrow. Get that fax out."
It's all done to convince the cartel members the detective is actually Tony Romano.
You have to establish credibility with these people. If you say who you are, somebody, you have to show them, you have to prove it. So we set up this operation to bring them there and put them at ease. Plus it served as a meeting place. It was out of the view of the public. They felt secure, they felt safe.
It's a slow process as the task force orchestrates a complex fraud against wary adversaries. Supervisory Special Agent Fernando Llanos.
These were savvy people. These were people that were involved in drug trafficking for many years in Colombia and elsewhere outside of Colombia in furtherance of the cartel's major worldwide distribution effort. Throughout the whole investigation, we were always concerned that, there would be a slip-up, that something inappropriate would be said, or perhaps that surveillances would be made that would give the whole thing up.
If the cartel ever suspects anything, they would likely kill Eppolito and his informant. On rare days off, Eppolito needs a reason he can't meet Monica and Willie. He tells them he often goes to Atlantic City to tend to the mafia business there. Eventually, Monica and Willie ask to see the Atlantic City operation. Eppolito's got a problem. He has no real business in Atlantic City. The team scrambles to create an elaborate ruse that will trick the drug dealers.
Took them all to Atlantic City. That's another credibility thing. They wanted to see where I spent my weekends, where I hung out. So we took them to the casinos. The Jersey State Police were very instrumental in setting up the casinos where I could, walk in like I was a big shot. We could comp them. We got them rooms. We dined like kings and queens.
Backup is all around. The entire undercover operation is carefully scripted, and nothing is left to chance. The task force wants the cartels to see everything they need to see to believe Eppolito is a mafioso. They even send in an undercover officer to act as a mafia captain and ask the informant for a meeting with Eppolito.
The informant talked to Richie. Richie walked away, but in clear view of the other participants. The other individual is prearranged, threw his arms around Richie, greeted him, kissed him on both cheeks, and he handed him an envelope with a wad of money. And Richie sent him on his way, walked back to the table, pulled out the wad of money in the envelope, leaped through it, put his back, and Richie complained that he's always working. Even in Atlantic City, he can't catch a break. And these people were totally impressed with this.
But the cartel needs more convincing. They send an interrogator to meet with Eppolito. His street name is Sammy, and he specializes in finding undercover cops.
Sammy was somebody, he was a wild card that was introduced to the investigation. He was, an enforcer, somebody that apparently, was capable of, determining whether somebody was, a law enforcement officer, obviously.
The room is fully wired, and agents watch from an office in the hotel. In touch with backup stationed near the room. They must protect Eppolito, but they can't move too soon.
You have to make a decision basically in a split second. And if you make the wrong decision in a case like this, let's say to move in, you could blow maybe about a year's worth of investigation. Now, if you move too slow, you could lose an undercover.
Sammy starts the interrogation.
I didn't pat him at the door to see if he was armed or not, but a lot of these guys are armed and you gotta be careful. And I had to make sure I came up with the right answers because if we had any inclination that I was either a bad guy looking to rip him off or law enforcement, God knows what might have happened.
Eppolito knows backup is there, but it's still a tense situation.
There's always a signal that's set up between you and the backups in case something goes wrong, or a code word. And you let loose with the signal or the code word, they just take the whole thing down.
Several times, Sammy hints that he thinks Eppolito's trying to trick them.
We were extremely close there. We could have got in there in a couple of seconds, but those couple of seconds could have meant life or death. So it is a gut-wrenching situation.
As Sammy continues to press Eppolito, agents fear that one wrong answer could destroy the entire investigation, and Detective Eppolito would be killed. Undercover Detective Richard Eppolito faces off against an interrogator from Pablo Escobar's drug cartel, a man known only as Sammy. He demands details of Eppolito's past crimes to prove he really is a mafioso. Agents watch the meet, ready to send in backup.
At some point during the interrogation process, I felt I had to put a stop to it before either I said something that I couldn't back or the informant. And I basically stood up. I told him, I says, listen, I says, do you really expect me to tell you everything I've done? Do you expect me to tell you the people I've killed? The people I've dealt drugs with? I says, for all I know, you could be a cop, you could be an agent. I says, I told you what I'm going to tell you.
The detective takes a risk, in character as Tony Romano, demanding more respect.
I says, here's my hand. Either you feel comfortable with me, or it's a pleasure meeting you, and I'll take my business elsewhere.
The tension rises.
And he got all upset, walked off to the side, talking to them. There was some hollering and screaming in Spanish, of course, which I didn't understand.
Sammy and the others might be planning something violent, but Eppolito can't back down now.
You can't show that you're intimidated or afraid of them. That's the worst thing. You got to come on just as strong or even stronger than they do at times.
Detective Mike Garrity is seconds away, but seconds might be too late.
We were getting ready to move in, but Richie handled it excellent. He was able to get out of it.
Watch post 1, all units stand down, everything's okay.
Finally, Sammy decides Eppolito is the real thing.
He came back, smiled, shook my hand, and said, we'll be doing business.
Once again, the detective has conned the criminals. Customs agent Phil Spinelli.
It's all part of being an undercover. It's all part of being able to act calmly under pressure. And Richie, of course, being the pro he is, handled it very well.
Before the drug traffickers leave Atlantic City, Sammy decides to test the informant, according to Supervisory Special Agent Fernando Llanos.
All of the subjects asked the source to go to one of their rooms to talk to him, and fortunately we had an adjacent room, and we're able to listen in to the conversation.
The informant is a civilian, not law enforcement, and might not hold up to the pressure of the interrogation. Agents watch as Sammy tries to get the informant to double-cross Tony Romano. He pushes hard.
Got a little heated at times. The backup teams thought they were going to have to go crashing through the door and rescue the informant and just basically take the case down at that point.
It's a big case, but not worth a man's life.
You have to take calculated risks, and this was another instance where we needed to do that. You know, can we respond quickly enough? Can we get into the room if this man whips out a gun, you know, or a knife and puts it to our source's throat?
The informant refuses to betray the powerful mafioso.
He says, his people will kill me. Quicker than that. He says, I could never do anything to betray him or the family. And when he said that, they respected him. And they saw he wasn't going to betray me, so I guess they felt he had a certain amount of integrity. And he wouldn't be that much of a risk factor for them as well. And they broke open a bottle of champagne in the room, and they celebrated.
Another possible crisis averted.
It could have been the end of the investigation, or the end of the informant if they had decided to kill him.
It seems like endless meetings, but this level of caution is how the cartels grew so powerful.
You're dealing with formidable adversaries. I mean, there was a lot of negotiations before we got down to the fine movements of getting the drugs from Colombia over to here.
As the investigation deepens, the next step up the ladder is Hernando Sanchez-Eneo, a high-level cartel member. He suggests going beyond a single shipment and opening a new drug pipeline into the U.S., a marriage of the Colombian cartels and the American mafia.
We gave them the opportunity to move a product without law enforcement interceding from the pier to one of our warehouses. So in effect, what we did, we provided one-stop shopping for this organization, and they loved it.
The addition of Hernando means the C-13 task force is moving deeper into Escobar's cartel.
It was a feather in our cap to get him involved in this particular thing, and more we knew we were getting closer and closer to the source.
With a warrant, investigators tap Hernando's phones. To protect Eppolito, they route calls through a secure Atlantic City phone number to his New York home. During one call, Hernando asks Eppolito to come to Colombia with him to inspect a cocaine shipment. It's too dangerous for Eppolito to go. It would be like walking into the lion's den. And the task force would be unable to protect him. But if he backs out, the cartel may grow suspicious and kill him. Undercover detective Richard Eppolito was working to bring down the powerful Medellin drug cartel. Hernando Sanchez-Eneo wants him to accompany him to Colombia to inspect a cocaine shipment. The detective must get out of the trip. It's too dangerous. His team could not protect him on foreign soil. Thinking quickly, he tells Hernando he can't leave his mob business unattended and hopes he doesn't suspect anything.
I mean, one of two things could happen. They could just walk away from you and never have anything to do with you again. Or depending on how far you are into their group or organization, how much you do know, your life could be at risk.
Eppolito gets a break. Hernando falls for the story. The task force continues to follow the suspects to ID more associates. Investigators watch as Hernando meets with a man identified as Mauro Trujillo, a high-level cartel member who's been wanted by the DEA for narcotics trafficking and money laundering. Agents want to grab him, but they don't want to blow the current investigation, so they wait. As Ippolito gets deeper into the deadly cartel, the danger increases.
It was a high-risk factor. You know, some nights I didn't go home. If I did go home, I would have to do it in such a way where I made sure I wasn't being followed.
Finally, as the new year passes, Ippolito learns the shipment is on its way. But there's a change of plans. Instead of the cocaine, Hernando says they're sending a test load. 9.5 tons of marijuana. In character as Tony Romano, the detective acts upset at the change. But it's a big load, and would be the evidence they need to bring the operation to a close.
It was a heck of a test load. Normally, we hadn't seen anything like that. Test loads were like 1 or 2 kilos. See if it gets seized, goes out to the street, and let's see what happens.
The task force can't let that amount of drugs on the street. When the load arrives at the New York docks, undercover investigators transport it directly to Ippolito's warehouse. The investigators need to check the container's contents. But there's a seal on its door to ensure no one has opened it. It's a common practice in international shipping. Agents need to find a way to get inside and keep the seal intact. U.S. Customs Agent Phil Spinelli.
What they were able to do is to detach the door without breaking the seal.
At first, it looks like a normal shipment of clothing. Stashed behind the shirts, marijuana. Literally tons of it.
We recovered somewhere in the neighborhood of about 272 cartons or crates containing 19,000 pounds of marijuana valued in excess of $22 million.
They're definitely dealing with a major cartel.
It's not easy to put together 9.5 tons of marijuana. These people had the resources to do all this. These were bad guys, major violators. They, they plagued this country with this stuff. And, they just needed to be taken down and bring a halt to their operation.
For prosecution, the C-13 task force needs the suspects to complete the transaction and accept the shipment. Ippolito invites them to the warehouse.
And of course there was video and surveillance equipment in place. We had one of my workers come with a big bolt cutter and cut the seal on the back of the container. And I handed them the seal. I said, here's a souvenir for you. And they could see that the load was sealed. It wasn't tampered with. It got here in one piece. And I happened to have an Italian switchblade on me, by the way. I cut it open, and they examined it, and they were happy. They saw it was the stuff they had sent over, and they also wanted to take some back with them.
But Ippolito can't let the drugs hit the street, and uses the cartel's unplanned switch from cocaine to marijuana to his advantage.
I said, now you screwed me, and, this is basically how it's going to go. You're going to do what I tell you to do. I want those 5,000 kilos here. When I get my drugs, then you get your marijuana.
The suspects panic. They are desperate to take control of the drugs. Shockingly desperate.
Monica actually offered up her baby to me as a form of collateral and good trust.
It's a stunning move no one expects.
Fear comes across when you hear stories like that. And the reason being is that if she's willing, they give her child up to this unknown criminal figure. What would she have done to myself or any member of the investigative team if in fact she found out we were law enforcement, or if in fact she found out that Richie in reality was an undercover police detective? It sends a couple of chills up your spine.
Ippolito stands firm. He will not release the marijuana until the cocaine he ordered comes through. cartel members finally agree and plan to meet later. While C-13 plans arrests, Eppolito faces increased pressure from angry cartel members.
It got pretty heated during these latter meetings because they kept pressuring him to release the drugs, to release some of the marijuana so they could then sell it.
On February 3rd, 1993, more than a year after the investigation began, the arrest plans are finalized. The task force moves in. They start with Willie and Monica at Eppolito's office. By this time, the pair suspects nothing.
They were bewildered. They didn't know what was going on. Guys coming with shotguns, guns out, bulletproof vests on.
Then, the man they knew as Tony Romano emerges.
I went out there to speak to them and try to get them to cooperate. And I told them, I said, you know who I am? I'm from the police. And I guess they felt betrayed and that I had deceived them, which I did, in the interest of justice. And Willie actually looked at me with tears in his eyes and he says, how could you do this to me? I said, well, Willie, I says, you come into this country, you bring this stuff, you destroy our people, our youth. I said, I'm a police officer, I'm a detective. I says, I'm here to uphold the law. I says, you broke the law. I said, you people are under arrest. And that was it, and I walked out of the room.
FBI agents, FBI agents.
Within 24 hours, C-13 arrests Hernando and 6 other co-conspirators. Magola is never found, having fled to Colombia. Eduardo, Monica, Willie, Hernando, Trujillo, and others are each charged with multiple counts of conspiracy to distribute narcotics. FBI Special Agent Mary Setzer.
They all pled guilty. However, Mauro Trujillo, also known as Restrepo, fled the country and left for Colombia. The FBI is looking for information regarding the whereabouts of Mr. Trujillo. If anybody has that information, they can call the New York office of the FBI at 212-384-1000.
More than a year of dangerous undercover work by the agents and officers of the C-13 task force helped cripple a drug cartel many thought was unstoppable.